Half a day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Agu'ot, a Fanachu podcast series amplifying queer, feminist, and gendered voices in Guåhan. Each month, we feature filmmakers, artists, activists, and students to share their enriching experiences on topics including identity, queerness, feminism, arts, mental health, and community building. The name Agu'ot, meaning to hold each other in CHamoru, reflects the intention to uplift and hold a collective space for marginalized voices. I'm your host, Helen Yeung, a Hong Kong Chinese queer feminist scholar, community organiser, mother, illustrator and zine-maker from Aotearoa, New Zealand, now living in Guåhan. I hope you enjoy this episode. Half a day, everyone. Our guest for the first podcast episode is Amanda Dedicatoria, a queer Filipino writer and filmmaker in Guåhan. Amanda uses any pronouns and is a self-proclaimed empanada enthusiast. Welcome, Amanda.
Half a day, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the intro. That was perfect.
Yeah. So this is my first episode for the segment. I'm a little nervous, but hopefully, Amanda's an amazing guest and I can't wait to chat with you about everything.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so honored to be here and to be able to talk with you and all of your listeners.
Yeah, so I saw Amanda actually at the Migratory Bird event last weekend, was it?
Oh, yeah. It was last Saturday. It was just kind of like one of those instances in which you're like, I've seen you online. I've seen your username. Are you Chinese girl?
Yeah, I was. So Amanda submitted to a zine. I'm a queer zine I'm doing with a group of friends in Guam. And yeah, I was really excited to meet them that day. And yeah, just tell me more about, the event. Did you enjoy it? You were working there?
Oh, yeah. So I work for Guam NSF EPSCoR at the University of Guam, and as a part of the event, we were able to partner with UOG Sea Grant, and we funded the Bird Fest, the Migratory Bird Festival. It was the second annual event of its kind, and we had birders, we had vendors, we had a lot of outreach about birds and everything birds, and it was just really wonderful, and it was so nice to see you there.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing a cocoa bird as well, so I was really excited. And my 9-month-old daughter got to touch a brown tree snake, so
oh my God, that's
it
so
was
exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah, aren't cocoa birds so brown? I don't know, they're just so soft and so cute.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was I think it's really great that that you're giving us this opportunity to be able to talk about our stories as queer people in Guåhan. And when I saw the submissions for your zine, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this before, and this is just so exciting that that you were able to give this voice and give this opportunity for us to share our stories.
Yeah, when I arrived on island maybe 1.5 years ago, and while I was in touch with some people about zines, I didn't get to see many feminist zines or zines that represented marginalized communities and queer voices. And it was around a year before I met friends and was able to be oh yeah, I want to make a zine like that. I want to, feel comfortable talking about my experiences and inviting other people to join me and just connecting with other people. It was a very new experience for me, for someone migrating from Aotearoa, New Zealand. What was your initial reaction when you saw the post, or where did you see the post?
I saw it on, I think it was Noelle's Instagram, and I saw it on Instagram. And when I saw the flyer, I just wanted to say that I really love mushrooms, so the mushrooms kind of caught me at first. And when I read the description, I was thought that I had was just finally, finally we have this sort of outlet to really talk about the unique experience of being queer in a place like Guåhan.
Yeah, I really like the link kind of mycology and mushrooms have with, I guess, queerness. And I don't know if you've read any literature around that, or there's kind of growing link between queerness and how mushrooms and fungi are just like part of that movement.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh man, if you ask any of my friends, like, you know, what they identify with me, it would just be mushrooms, because I do resonate with that, because like I feel like mushrooms, a lot of like the just existing as a queer person, like some of the similarities that we have with mushrooms is that there's a lot of internal work, that a lot of the magic happens inside. And like when it comes to like mycelium, and when it comes to being queer, and it's only after some time, like when it's time, that there's a sort of emergence and a blossoming.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And for me, I'm just like, sometimes I feel like I'm just like a squishy mushroom with that's genderless, and you know, I kind of just identify as like some squishy blobby thing, and that's how I feel. And yeah, that's why I used fungi for the poster as well, mushrooms, and yeah, I was really happy with that. I felt like it represented a lot of like stuff I was reading at the time and things like that. So tell me more about your poem that you submitted to the zine.
So my poem is called When You Are Coming Out to Yourself. Did you want me to like read it out?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I would love to hear it.
Okay, so let's see. So when you are coming out to yourself, you do not have to be good. You only have to press your fingers into the soft clay that is your body and mold. Round the edges, wet your hands with earth, form instead of conform, and realize you are not manufactured, you are created. Embed the tenderness of friends who press their forehead to yours and tell you that they will love you as you are and who you will be. Dip yourself in glaze, let it cocoon you, and finally fire yourself with the will, the fear, the joy of becoming.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. When I read it, I loved the poem already. When I received your submission, and I was like, I really want to connect with you, and I'm glad you're on the podcast now.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, when I was writing that poem, I feel like when it came to like the submission for the zine, it just really made me think about like the things that I write as like a writer and like as a poet. And I had realized that I'd never written anything about being queer and queerness. And so like what inspired this poem is kind of like sort of mundane moments of your life that are actually magical. Because like it's kind of like when you're truly just with yourself, in the moments that where the outside world and its expectations and, you know, and whatever it wants from you just doesn't exist in your mind, and you're just truly alone with yourself, and you're able to have this conversation in which you can discuss who you are, your existence, and what you can become. I think that was like a lot of what really inspired the poem. Because to me, you know, queerness it's love, it's liberation, it's freedom, but it's also about possibility. I think the most wonderful thing is that a lot of the queer people in my life are creatives. I think the reason behind that is because like we've all had to create ourselves in a world in which that was devoid of the space that looked like us.
Yeah, I feel that definitely. Like after moving to Guam, I've been having to navigate, like it's very different from the city life that I was used to in Auckland, and I guess just having to slow down day to day and just learn to live with myself was an act of queerness to me, and how radical it could be with resisting structures as well, and being like, you know, anti-authoritarian and focusing on like rest and love and liberation and building community. Because essentially after I moved here, like COVID was at its worst in Guam as well, and I just felt like, you know, I had no community. I was pregnant as well, and I was kind of just like indoors most of the time, and I was like, oh my god, I'm never gonna make friends, I'm never gonna have a queer community in Guam. Where is everyone?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I think for a lot of that time, with the pandemic happening as well, like our views around structures have really changed. And I've read a lot of literature around queer parenting as well, and how that affects my role as a parent or as a mother. So I love what you talk about with building communities and, you know, queerness as a possibility for liberation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's anything that I have learned throughout my life is that there's always someone who's going to love you. And sometimes that person is just yourself. Like, sometimes it can be hard. It can be really hard to, like, just love yourself because, like, you know, you're the person who has been with you your whole life. But I feel like your relationship with yourself is a romance. And it should always be passionate. And you should always, like, work hard to see yourself in ways in the perspective of someone who adores you and loves you.
I think for me that radically shifted when I moved as well, because before I was doing a lot of community work. When I was in Aotearoa, New Zealand, I was doing community work. I was like doing creative workshops all the time and speaking at events, and I felt like I was doing what I was really passionate about, but also burnt out. But moving here made me feel like that was all erased, and my identity is like being rebuilt as a parent and as someone that wasn't able to, or still isn't employed yet because of, immigration processes and things like that. Just thinking about those things and spending time to myself has made me really reflect on the idea of like loving myself and like just like what movement building means for me.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you've had that experience and you've had those like realizations with yourself.
Yeah, I feel like definitely like it's hard to find different communities here.
It definitely is. I'm like, what? Like, we have so many coffee shops here, and like none of them is like a queer like coffee shop. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, maybe we should open one.
Oh yeah, that would be so good. I've been dreaming of like having one with like some bookshelves where like we can feature, you know, stuff from like local artists, stuff from like, you know, local writers and all that stuff, and we could just have people like eating cupcakes and muffins and lounging around.
Yeah, when I first got here, I was asking my partner, so where are all the spaces for activists or like, you know, feminists or queer folk to hang out, like, and he was essentially like, I'm not really sure, like, or there's not really many things going on in Guam. Yeah, I guess I was in a bit of shock when I first arrived here because there's not many community things going on, perhaps because of the pandemic, but yeah, I just felt like very isolated as well in Guam with finding other queer folk.
Yeah, I can definitely I can definitely like feel that because like I know that like there are a lot of like events around Pride Month, which is great, but I'm queer every day of the year. So I don't know, like I really get that want and that desire to be able to make those connections. Like someone was telling me like, oh, you can go to the Untouchable shows at Icon. And I was like, I sleep at 10. Are there drag shows that like show at 7 p.m.? Because if there are, then like, you know, count me in. But otherwise, like, you know, I want to be queer in the daytime too.
Yeah. I think for me as well, like now that I have like a daughter, I'm just thinking about how my life in Auckland would not have played out the same because all the queer events are at night, you know, people go dancing and like there's music and everything, and I'm just like, I need to put her to sleep. I have to go home. I'm really tired. So I can't imagine it playing out anymore the same. And yeah, like even events that are friendly for queer parents as well, like thinking about things like that. I just feel like it's so hard to find things like that here.
We could definitely start something. I was thinking about like, wow, you know, we could have like book clubs, just gatherings, we could just get to know us like events.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
I think I just want to have like a picnic or something really cute.
That would be so fun.
Yeah. And we can dress up with like mushroom print.
Oh my God. You just know.
Yeah. I guess talking more about like queer communities, are there any like organizations you've come across or events that were particularly memorable for you?
Well, that's kind of like a tough one because like we have like gone through those those challenges. I think the last time I ever went to a queer event was, there was like a pride event in Aganya, and it was like a few years ago before COVID. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like, pretty non-existent.
Yeah. I think personally, a lot of pride events are very like, you know, capitalist and like commodified, and it's just like shops putting up rainbow flags and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily like want to actually, you know, attend an event like that sometimes, or like, yeah, like you said, I'm queer every day, not just on the days where they decide to put out a flag or like some rainbow decorations, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I guess they're nice, right? It's a good sentiment, and it's nice that visibility is there, and I don't take that for granted, because, like, you know, as someone who's lived here and has seen the attitudes shift throughout the years, it's just been amazing. Mm-hmm. But I feel like as a community, we should never stop striving for more.
Yeah.
Like, we should have these spaces. We should, like, be able to connect with each other. We should be able to know that we can walk into a room and we can walk into a space and know that we are welcomed as we are.
Yeah, I wish there was like a club at University of Guam or something, you know, even to like talk more about queerness and feminism and gender. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something where young people can gather as well.
Yeah, that would definitely be like super exciting. I know that at one of the high schools at JFK, John F. Kennedy, they do have, I believe, like a pride club. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really exciting to see.
Yeah.
That, you know, some of the people in the younger generations are making these spaces for themselves.
Yeah. So tell me more about queerness and queer identity, and how you define that for yourself.
That's a really good question, because I feel like when you think about it, queerness is just so open that it's really hard to define it. And if you really put like a definition on it, and you kind of put it in boxes, when like that's just not the point of queerness.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, as someone who like grew up queer here, I kind of like have this distinct memory of being 8 years old and looking into the mirror and like being surrounded by like all my family members, and just having this thought that was, you are not like the people who are around you. And it kind of haunted me, because I was like, well, what do you mean by that? I just had that thought follow me for years. And looking back, I realized that I just didn't have the vocabulary for these experiences. I actually didn't have any queer adults that I could look up to, that I could see as like my representation in like my daily life. Because like the culture here at the time was very like, hush hush, you don't really like talk about like sexuality, like if at all. So growing up was a little tough, because I had to figure out who I was. I'm someone who is gender non-conforming, someone who is like androgynous, and so I had to like, who came from one of those like stereotypical Filipino families in which, since I was like born assigned female at birth, that I would kind of act and display myself within those parameters. But I wasn't any of that. I think one of the greater memories that I have as a kid is being 14 years old and my dad taking me to the men's section of Ross. And I felt like liberation. It felt like celebration. I have never in my life have I ever been like so excited to hold a pair of cargo pants.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I was like, it just felt so good, and I felt so free at that moment, that it just opened up all of these possibilities for me. I think I draw like a lot of inspiration from just seeing other queer people in my daily life, and like they could be wearing a dress or like an outfit, or like just have these accessories, or present themselves in a way in which that makes me so excited, because I'll be thinking, wow, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
You could do that. I could do that. Or what else can I do? And just kind of rolling with that feeling and that thought, and discovering more about myself and what I like, and what joy feels like in my body.
Right.
I definitely feel like there's a lot of pain when it comes to like coming to terms with the fact that you are queer, because of all the expectations that are around you. But I think what a lot of people don't really talk about is just the joy, like the joy that you find in discovering all of these parts about yourself that make you feel more you.
Yeah, I loved that as well. I think for me, I grew up in a very traditional, like, Chinese migrant family, and my parents migrated to New Zealand before I was 1, actually. So while I was growing up with very strict, like, traditional Chinese values around gender, around what it means to be, like, you know, a girl, or like what I shouldn't do, I had these moments you're describing as, like, you know, little moments of, like, euphoria or happiness, where I remember you spoke about being taken to, like, the men's section at Ross. I remember my mum bought me a boys flannel when I was in junior high, and it was a blue DC flannel, and it was like a skater kind of flannel, and I was so happy putting that on and going to school, because it made me feel like, I guess, like, boyish, and it reflected what I was feeling about my gender at the time, and it just made me happy looking in the mirror. And I think I've felt these little moments of joy like you describe, like, throughout my life as well, but then there's a lot of pain mixed into, like, being confused about your gender as well.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like while there can be a lot of pain and confusion in, like, discovering who you are, I feel like the joy and the happiness kind of surpasses all of that. Like, that is what I live for. I get to wake up. I don't know. Well, the reason why I said that I'm an empanada enthusiast is not only because, like, I love them so much. I just can't wake up early enough to get them. But is because, like, I love the magic in ordinary things and the magic in ordinary moments, because these are the moments in which they make you who you are.
Yeah.
Like, every day I wake up and I look in the mirror and I don't feel restricted anymore. I feel like, hey, that's me, and it's me, and it feels so great to be me.
Yeah, that sounds so beautiful. I think for me, I'm still kind of struggling with that as well. It's like a constant process. Like, some days I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I don't really like it to be me today. And then next day I'll be like, wow, I love this outfit I'm wearing. Or, like, you know, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I love being me today. I love that I'm doing a podcast episode, or, like, you know, meeting cool people today. And I think it's just, like, a constant process as well. What are some things you do to make you feel happy about?
Well, for me, I try to practice a lot of gratitude, where I wake up and there are people who love me in the world. There are books that I get to read and enjoy. There are movies that I get to cry over. There are friends who I get to see even after, like, so long. And I try to think about all the things that I'm grateful for, even when it gets tough, especially when it gets tough.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like gratitude can really be your tether to, like, yourself. It can be hard. Like, there are definitely some, like, difficult days, but, you know, at the end of the day, you have yourself, and you've gone through all of your hardest days. So if you're listening to this, like, you're a fighter. Like, congratulations. You've gotten this far, and you'll just keep going. And isn't that so wonderful?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to just celebrate every day that we're still here, you know, things like that as well. And yeah, I think you talked a bit about your upbringing as well. So how do you feel like, you know, our queerness is not just, like, gendered, it's also racialized as well as people of color. So how do you think being Filipino and your identity influences this?
Ooh, that's, like, a really good question. I think within the past few years, I've been really kind of, like, soul searching in terms of, like, my identity as, like, a Filipino person. I've lived here all of my life. I'm a part of a second generation immigrant family. So my parents moved here, and then I was born here, and, like, I didn't grow up around a lot of, like, you know, Filipino kids, because, like, you know, we just were, like, a very small family. So I did know a good amount about like, you know, my culture, but not much about like queerness. And so like lately I've just been reading a lot of books about like, you know, the history of the Philippines, its cultures, and like I've read that like there was queerness like before. Like it was like fully accepted. And I don't know, it's sorry. I didn't think about this one. Could you repeat the question again?
I guess just wanting to know more about how your Filipino identity influences the way you think about queerness, or even the way the way it's like influenced the different ways you think about queerness, whether it be like negative or positive. And you mentioned revisiting like historical kind of texts and looking at how queerness was accepted. But just wondering how this influenced your upbringing.
Well, yeah, I've been reading a lot of books about like, you know, Filipino history and culture, and I've kind of discovered that we've always been here. And I think I found a lot of comfort in that because, you know, for so long I felt like a sort of puzzle piece that just couldn't fit in the whole like grand scheme of things. But then I kind of realized that I'm not a puzzle piece. I'm a piece of wood that can be carved into whatever shape it wants to be.
What about family-wise growing up? You mentioned growing up in a, I guess, more traditional family as well, or where they talked about gender in very normative ways, or like how did you feel like that contradicted some of your ideas around queerness? Or
Oh, man. I think when you say that, what comes to mind, and I'm sure that some of our Filipino listeners could probably identify with, is all of the Palmolive commercials, you know, the shampoo that smells like super floral, with all of these like, you know, they're light-skinned Filipinas. They have like super straight hair that's like super shiny. It's flowing. I don't know how soft. I don't know how like it gets to be like so smooth when they're like swishing their hair and with all the water in it. But yeah, like that was kind of like the quintessential idea of what it would be to be like a Filipino woman. And I was not that at all. I am morena. I am tanned. I am dark-skinned. I have curly hair that's like super thick, and I just wasn't that image at all. And so like even if I did try to like conform to that, there was just no way that I could. And you know, for a time I had spent years like straightening my hair and getting all of these perms. And even when I was trying to emulate that sort of, I guess that sort of ideal, when I thought that, you know, when I finally was that ideal, that I would be happy, that I would fit, that I would be whoever I was supposed to be. When I was that ideal, I just realized, oh, this is just not for me. It doesn't fit me. And I just don't want it. So, like, there just came a day where I had my long straight hair and I chopped it all off, and it felt good.
yeah, I think for me that moment was like in senior high, when I was in like my last year of high school, or the second last year. I was just like, wow, I'm so sick of looking like, you know, the ideal, or like the cool Asian girl, the only cool Asian girl at my school with like long hair and a fringe and everything. So I also ended up chopping off all my hair. I had a pixie cut for most of the rest of high school, actually. Yeah. And that felt really liberating to me, and I felt much better about myself. There's just something about changing your hair and your appearance and finally accepting that this is how it matches how you feel inside. That feels very liberating, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's literally a weight that's chopped off.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I remember during that time as well, I really enjoyed like wearing men's clothes, or like, yeah, boys' t-shirts and things like that. And that just felt really good to me, I remember at the time. Like you talked about before, like those little flashes of like happiness as well.
There's just more room.
Yeah.
There's more pockets.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we've talked about your queer identity and, you know, queerness and what it means to you. So I understand that you have a background in journalism as well, and, you know, you have a passion for storytelling, I'm guessing, as well. So do you want to tell us more about that?
Oh, definitely. So I think ever since I was a kid, I'd always wanted to be a journalist because I always found it kind of fascinating to realize that, you know, we all have our own stories. So I studied journalism in the communications program at the University of Guam. And after that, I spent 2 years as a broadcast journalism on Guam. And I mostly covered education, science, and environmental issues. So I think during that time, it was just really inspiring to get to know the community here, to get to know the community here and all the stories that they had to tell.
Yeah, that's really cool. I also used to be a journalist as well for the national TV station in New Zealand. I was an online journalist. And yeah, I think unlike your experiences, I really did not enjoy covering the kind of like, just like the white and like kind of often sexist topics that I needed to cover on a daily basis, really. And yeah, I just experienced a lot of like gendered, racialized discrimination during my job as well. And I felt like I didn't fit the ideal image they wanted for a journalist that they would promote to be on TV, because it's mostly just the ideal like white woman or like the model minority that would get promoted. And I was very unhappy in that job. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you had a really positive experience in journalism as well. But did you feel burnt out at times too?
Definitely. You know, as exciting and as much of an honor it was to be able to listen to all these stories and to really get to know the community here, it's hard being so close. Like, it's hard to really draw those boundaries between work and life because you are dealing with people who are probably just down the street from you. And I do relate with what you said like earlier about that sort of discrimination, because I would often, when I would anchor, I would be on screen and at the mercy of our viewers. And there were times in which some people would comment really mean things. And I'm like, I'm just trying to do my job and exist here. Like, what is going on? And so sometimes, like, you know, putting yourself out there is scary.
Yeah.
And I don't think that like a lot of people just acknowledge that and kind of take that for granted. Like putting yourself out for hundreds, maybe thousands of people to see. And it's a brave thing to do. And, you know, you're not really helping if you're being mean.
Yeah. So did you feel like within your journalism job, you got to cover topics around gender and queerness as well? And did that contribute to what you later did with, you know, your work in filmmaking, or was that beforehand?
Well, I did cover a few stories about like, you know, the queer community here. I did cover like a few like pride events. There was one instance of like someone had or a student had tried to like make a diversity club at their school. Like all of those like were really exciting stories that really kind of opened my eyes and said, oh, we really need more. We need more spaces here, and we need more like community here and more chances for us to like get together and really talk about these things.
Yeah. Did you feel like it was difficult though as a journalist, because you were often just like the observer and not really like the person to necessarily like be a part of those events you're covering or like drive the change? Did it feel like almost isolating for you, or?
It kind of felt like sometimes during those interviews, it felt like there was kind of like a glass wall in between me and my interviewee, in which I was just the observer, the recorder, just someone who was there to like take in their perspective. while inside I was like, I really want to tell you that I'm just like you.
Yeah, I felt that too as well for a lot of the things I had to cover. So I guess, did you make films after or before you were a journalist?
Throughout.
Throughout?
So I made a few films like when I was in college and a little bit after college. My most recent project that I worked on was a film called Good by Rizal Almonds. She's like a really great friend, and she's such a great filmmaker. Rizal, if you're listening to this, you are awesome. And it was about what it's like struggling with depression. And it was really inspiring to be able to have the honor to work on a story like that.
And is it in 2018? In 2018, did you direct or produce a film called The Walk?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us more about that? And was it kind of revolving around your own story or?
Oh, for that one, it was actually it was a documentary that I produced, directed, and shot all on my own for like a project for school. And it was about my friend Trevor, who was trying to like find himself religiously. So it was just, he was an atheist, and like he at one point like converted into Christianity. And so I wanted to like get to know about like what his thought process were regarding that journey.
Ah, I see. So what inspired you to be a filmmaker?
Well, I think as someone who was a part of the communications program here at the University of Guam, I was just surrounded by fellow filmmakers. So I took a few classes like, what is it? It was like documentary and independent film and independent filmmaking. And I did have like a few opportunities to work on like these films and really get into the scene.
Yeah, that's really cool that you guys have so many opportunities here. I think when I was younger, I was really interested in media studies in my last years of high school, and I wanted to get into filmmaking, but my parents were just like, being traditional Asian parents, they were like, you can't make a career out of that. So I kind of gave up on like wanting a creative career and filmmaking as well. And now I feel like it's too late.
Super too late.
Yeah, here I am making a podcast as some form of media making as well. Yeah, so do you have any projects or films coming up that you're planning to make?
I don't have like any films that are like coming up, but I am working on like a collection of poetry. I would describe it as like a mini memoir of like my life.
Wow.
And living here.
I can't wait to read it. Will you publish it?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm trying to work on like how to do that. It would be my very first time to do that.
Yeah, so in regards to the mediums you work with, like filmmaking and poetry and art, so how do you feel like your queer identity plays a role in that? Why these mediums?
I've always loved writing because I've always been a storyteller. Like I have a lot of like memories from my childhood of just going home after school and going to my grandpa's room and being like, Grandpa, tell me a story. And he'd always tell me like all of these folk tales from like the Philippines. And they would be like the three same folk tales, but like with different details each time. So he'd essentially be telling me the same story, but with different details. But to me, it was always like it was always exciting. It was always a different story, even though it was the same. And so I found like a lot of excitement in being able to create these worlds and these spaces in which you could experience, even if it's only for a few moments. So yeah, I've always loved stories, and I've always loved books, and I've always loved writing. When it came to film, it was kind of like for me an extension of writing, except that you could see all of the scenes in your head kind of play out on the screen. As far as like other like sort of things that or other art forms that I deal with, I also have gotten into printmaking, and I'm trying to like learn how to collage. So it's been really exciting to like, explore all of these ways in which I could express myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you're doing so many different things. I feel like I do that too. Like 1 minute I'll be like making zines, and the next minute I'm like, oh, I want to maybe try out making a podcast or something, or like some other medium, or like I want to do like baking or something. But I think that also just links to like how complex our identities are as well, and like being queer is like a part of this like expansive identity where you identify as like many things. Do you feel like that sometimes?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I see myself as a garden, and I can cultivate different parts of myself, and there are all these different parts of the garden, but they're all me, and not one is specifically representative of me, but everything as a collective is me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess, what do you see for queer representation on Island in future, or in the next few years? Is there something you're looking forward to?
Well, I mean, we did talk about like queer coffee shops.
Yeah, building more spaces.
Yeah, and book clubs. Like I really want more spaces in which queer people can exist without like alcohol, and without being like late at night, and without being like out late at night. Like I would want us to be seen when the sun's out. I would also love to see, like, in terms of like healthcare, like a clinic in which that would be open to queer patients. Like, you know, I've lived here all my life, and I can't tell you any physicians or clinics that are here that kind of offer that sort of healthcare, and and it really makes me sad because I feel like we need it.
Definitely. I feel like there definitely needs to be more gender diverse healthcare after coming here. Because, you know, when I first came here, or for the time I've been here, I was pregnant, as I shared. And I think just like the kind of healthcare I received was not very gender affirming. And it was very like, you're a woman, you're going to be a mother giving birth. So these are the things that you have to check off your, you know, whatever checklist you have, or you should feel very happy that you're going to have a child, or like this is what your daughter will do, like all very like kind of biologically aligned things that I was told through the process that made me feel very uncomfortable, even around like breastfeeding and the messages around that. All of it gave me quite a negative experience, I would say. So I definitely agree with you in terms of healthcare. Like, I see that a lot of forms here are very outdated as well in terms of the options you can check for gender and also sex.
It's just male, female, maybe other, if they're feeling generous. And I'm like, okay.
So definitely those things as well. And maybe last question, what are your goals and aspirations for the future? What are you looking forward to?
One of my goals is to wake up earlier so I can get empanadas.
What's the best empanadas on Island?
The one in my hand. Let's see. I think some goals. I don't really have like any like set goals or aspirations. They're more kind of like directions, which is like saying yes to more things and more opportunities that I haven't really, that I'm not really used to. Like, for example, I'm used to interviewing people. I'm not used to like being the one who's interviewed. So like, I'm trying my best to be like open to new experiences, and just like, even though I'm scared or even though I'm confused, to just like roll with it and see where it takes me.
I think I'm trying that out too for this year. New year, new me, maybe.
We're together.
How did you feel about our interview?
It was so fun. It was so lovely to meet you. Like,
yes, likewise. I felt like I talked about earlier, I felt very nervous doing this as my first podcast. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I'm trying this out for the end of every podcast episode for this segment. So what are 3 of your favorite songs or any media that you're consuming right now that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
It can be anything, something you're watching or an artist maybe.
Well, a song that I always love to listen to when it's like kind of difficult to like really feel good about myself is Love Myself by Haley Steinfeld. She like her work has been like so inspiring because that song I feel is a celebration of like yourself as a person in the world. I've been watching a lot of comedy sketches, and one sketch that I really love is Nanette by Hannah Gadsby, who is a butch lesbian comedian, and I just felt so seen and during that piece, and it was just so good. I cried so much as I laughed.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. What, do you have another one to share with us?
Let's see. I think, and this can be like anything, just anything.
Anything.
Well, I recently finished the Green Bone Saga by Fonda Lee, which is basically a trilogy of urban fantasy books with a lot of like East Asian inspired elements, in which there are two families, two like gang families that are kind of like at war with each other. And a lot of the questions that it asks is like, what would you do for your family, and how much, and where would your love take you? So it's been good. I think it's like one of the best books I've read within like these past few years.
So is it like historical, or is it based on now?
It's set in, I would say, like the 1960s, like Taiwan or like Hong Kong.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's really cool.
Yeah. Did you watch Pachinko?
No.
You should watch it. It's a series on Apple TV.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Is it based on the book?
Yeah, it's based on the book.
I have the book.
You have the book? You should read it.
I will. after this.
Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap up here, but it was really good to have you on the show and finally meet up.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been an honor. You are so lovely, and thank you all for listening. It's been really great to be able to share my story with you, and I hope that you feel more comfortable and you feel more loving.